Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, evening to you. Um, Trying to make sure that my sound is okay here, and I'm monitoring myself on another device. I can hear it there, so I think I'm okay. Um, it's good to be with you all this afternoon and this evening. Hope that you are having a good week, and hope you're staying healthy, keeping your sanity in these times. Um, just want to let you know that there was a little bit of a an issue last week where Facebook cut our live feed short. So if it happens to do that again, you can go over to our website, and we are in week 5 of our on the way. And so to kind of just recap very quickly, our theme at Wesley Memorial this year has been the way, and we got that from Isaiah, the 30th chapter, where it's the Lord speaking, and he says, kind of if you're in an uncertain time, you will hear a voice behind you saying, whether you turn to the right, whether you turn to the left, you will hear a voice saying, "This is the way, walk in it." And so we've been trying to explore what is the way of Christ, the way that God has for us to walk in. And so I realize this is session 4 discussion still, and we are actually going to be on session 5 discussion today. We've been in this discipleship study for 5 weeks. And as I mentioned earlier, if you go to our homepage of our website, there's a picture link up there where you can click on it. You can look at all of the previous 5 sessions, including number 5, which went up Monday. And there's handouts you can download for each of the 5 sessions. So you can maybe wait until all 8 of them are up there and just binge watch our discipleship study like a Netflix series. But each Wednesday I've just been coming on for a few minutes to just do a little bit of follow up with the discussion guide. And this past Monday, the topic was self denial. And so the how we've been going through this discipleship study, we're looking at the books of Luke and Acts in Scripture, and that did not put up the new stuff. So anyway, we've been looking at the books of Luke's Gospel and Acts, which are both written by Luke, a 2-part work there, and not this past Monday, but the Monday before, we started talking about 3 ways that we can follow Christ as a better disciple. And that was self-examination, self-denial, and then next week we'll be talking about self-sacrifice. And so the questions that are there in the discussion guide, the first question opens up asking you, do the parables of Jesus challenge your understanding of self-denial? And in Monday's video, if you have had a chance to watch it, or if you want to go back and watch it after this, we go through 2 parables of Jesus. One being the parable of the rich fool, which is a short parable, and then the other being probably the best known parable Jesus tells, other than the Good Samaritan, which is the parable of the prodigal son. And in both of those parables, we start to talk about how is Jesus presenting self-denial. And I'll leave it to you to go back at your own pace and watch all of the discussion there on Monday. But one of the ways that, and I talk about it a little bit in the video session Monday, this past Monday. One of the ways that I was challenged as I started to look at the parables of Jesus and look at what Jesus was teaching about there, and then even look over into the book of Acts, is that growing up in the church, I heard a lot of preaching and teaching about self-denial. You know, it's we must choose God's will over our will, and we must deny ourselves and follow the way of Jesus. But one of the things about the way that I remember that was it often involved a list of rules. You know, here's 10 things you need to deny for yourself. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then you will live, you know, life the way that you should or the way that God desires. But Jesus, he has some really critical remarks that he makes to religious leaders in the Gospel of Luke, and it's in the other Gospels too. And he kind of says to them, you know, doing God's will is not just about a list of rules. And so self-denial is not just a list of rules either. And I don't know about you, maybe that's been something you've struggled with, or something that you found, but self-denial, and it comes through maybe a little bit more obvious in the parable of the rich fool. But in that parable, the fact that this man, he has all this land, he has this abundant harvest, he's doing really well. God's not upset with him about that. But I think God is not pleased with the fact that the man decides to hoard all of his resources for himself. It's about the way that this man uses what he has just for his own benefit. And so self-denial has a lot to do with how you're using your resources. It doesn't mean that God is upset with you if you've been blessed with an abundance, but it means that that God has a certain way that he wants you to help bless others with those resources. And so again, that's been something that I've learned and have really started to reflect on. What does self-denial mean from the teaching of Jesus? And so out of that parable of the rich fool that I mentioned earlier, the second question on the study guide says, how do we practice being... You did? Well, I'll change you in just a minute, Bubby. How do we practice being generous towards God with our stewardship and resources? And that's really a very personal... Mommy was calling you, buddy. That's really a very personal question, but something I hope you will consider, because at the end of the parable of the rich fool, God, of course, tells this man, you've hoarded up all this stuff you have. Your life will be... Hey, you're okay. Your life will be demanded of you this very night. And then Jesus goes on to say, the situation in this parable, this is how it will be if you aren't generous towards God. So self-denial is about generosity, really. And that's ultimately how I kind of wrap it up in the discussion Monday, that self-denial it's the blessing of giving graciously and generously rather than living selfishly. So that's something to think about, that self-denial is about... There comes Mommy. She's coming to get him. Self-denial is about gracious giving rather than selfish living. So self-denial is not just about a God who is up there with a big stick and keep these rules. You have to give up all these different things, and then you're good enough. Self-denial is about, hey folks, everything you have comes from God. And so you can either take all of that abundance that God has given you and you can use it just on yourself. And so you can just make yourself the center of the whole world. Or you can take the abundance that God has given you. You can deny that whole selfish way of living that the world says, and you can follow Christ on this way of generosity and grace. So again, I don't know if that's really helped me truly as I've been preparing, as I was preparing for Monday's teaching time, and as I've thought about it more for today, thinking about self-denial in terms of graciousness, in terms of generosity, it's been a different way for me to think about it, but it's been helpful and more biblical, it seems like to me. And the way that you practice self-denial in your life will be very unique to you, because the kinds of resources that God has given each of us are unique to us. But again, it's not about if you have much or if you've been given lots of things. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But again, we have this choice to use those things to follow Christ or just to kind of worship ourselves. So something to think about. And the last question on the study guide for today is a very it's a very personal question. So I don't have a right or a wrong answer necessarily for it. Jesus is always a good right answer, though, as Ramon says. But the last question is, are you giving graciously or living selfishly? How can you better follow Christ on the way of self-denial? And so, this is a personal question for each of us, but it's something that I hope you will think about. It's something that I'm still thinking about after I prepared for the teaching time on Monday. Am I truly living in a gracious way? Because practicing self-denial, it means that we deny making our money and our resources about us. It means that we deny making our opinions and our judgments and our criticisms just about what we think should happen. And that's kind of the big question that comes up in the parable of the prodigal son, is that you have this father who is just offering grace to this prodigal son, just unmerited grace. And then you have the reaction of the older brother, and he is thinking, but I've worked hard to have what I have, and you ran off with your inheritance and squandered it. Why should we celebrate you? And so there's this question that really comes to the older brother, and it's kind of left unanswered. And I think it's because the question is for all of us. Do we value our own judgments and opinions of others more than we value God's grace to them? And so sometimes self-denial means that you let go of those judgments and criticisms. You deny yourself the right to just make a judgment call on someone. And instead, you choose God's way of grace. And y'all, that is hard. That is flipping hard sometimes. And so I think that as we've got more, like I said, 5 weeks into this study, we've got 3 more weeks left of this discipleship study on the way. I've thought to myself several times, like, this was really hard material to teach. Like, maybe I should have, chosen something that, I don't know, is lighter or, um, you know, doesn't make us think so hard or get so convicted. I don't know. But following Jesus on the way, um, it is tough. It is hard. And denying yourself, that's really hard. I mean, it is. Because we are preoccupied with ourselves a lot. We are. And we live in a world that says we should pursue what makes us happy. You should, take care of yourself. And again, nothing wrong with self-care, but there is a way that Jesus calls us to. It is a way of self-denial, and it's a way of taking the abundance of all that we have and not just making ourselves the center of our world, not just serving ourselves, but serving others. And we do that out of the abundance of what God has given us. So I encourage you, think about what God has blessed you with. And you may think, well, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of resources, but you have a testimony, you have a story about what God has done and is doing for you. And that story, that testimony can sometimes be an encouragement to others. We have gifts, spiritual gifts that the Lord has given us. Those are greater than anything money can buy us, really. We can have the fruit of the Spirit, and we can share that with others. And so I encourage you, think about the abundance of what God has given you. And then consider how you are stewarding or how you are using those gifts God has given you. Are you being a good steward of what you have? Are you simply using what you have to just further yourself or to just make your life better? Or are you taking what you have and you're following Christ on the way and you're trying to help find peace and wholeness for all? Because again, self-denial, it's not just about a list of rules. It's not just about do's and don'ts. But self-denial is about how and what you're doing with what you have. So again, if we're following Christ on the way, we are choosing gracious giving rather than selfish living. So think about these things, and praying for each of you, praying that the Lord will lead you on the way that He has for you, and that you stay safe. We miss so many of you, seeing you all in person. We look forward, hopefully we're praying that in the near future we'll be in a position again where we can have some folks maybe back in services some. But until then, we continue to try and connect with you as we can. And check out our website, look at all the previous sessions of this discipleship study and some other video resources and things we have. Blessings to you all. Love you all. Have a wonderful evening. And I pray that the rest of this week is a good one for you. Okay. Bye-bye.